Good morning. You're listening to The Brief Wake Up, your mindful start to the day. I am Handel, your daily coffee companion, helping you wake up informed, thoughtful, and maybe just a little amused before the day gets old. If you're commuting, corralling kids, or just standing in line for caffeine, you're in the right place. Let's get you caught up. As always, we start with health. Let's continue our conversation on data from wearables. We last spoke about HRV. This morning on topic is VO2max, one of the most misunderstood numbers in health. VO2max is not about how fast you run. It's not about looking fit. And it's definitely not just an athlete thing. VO2max measures the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during intense effort. In plain terms, it's how efficiently your heart, lungs, blood, and muscles work together under stress. It's a systems test. Oxygen comes in through the lungs. The heart has to deliver it. Blood has to carry it. Mitochondria have to use it. If any link is weak, the whole chain suffers. That's why VO2max is one of the strongest predictors we have of long-term health and survival. Stronger in many studies than cholesterol, blood pressure, or BMI. Because it doesn't measure how you look. It measures how much reserve you have when things get hard. Think of VO2max as your physiological margin of safety. As we age, VO2max naturally declines. About 5 to 10% per decade if you do nothing. That decline isn't just about performance, it's about resilience. Lower VO2max means less tolerance for illness, surgery, infection, stress. Higher VO2max means more capacity to absorb hits and recover. The good news is this: VO2max is highly trainable at almost any age. You don't need to become a marathon runner. You don't need extreme workouts. The biggest gains come from intensity contrast. Brief periods where your breathing is hard enough that conversation stops, followed by recovery. That's interval training. And it works because it forces the heart to pump more blood per beat and teaches muscles to extract oxygen more efficiently. Even 2 to 3 sessions a week can meaningfully improve VO2max in a matter of months. And here's the part people miss. Improving VO2max isn't about chasing a number on a watch. It's about expanding your capacity to live. It's walking upstairs without thinking about it. Recovering faster after a long day. Having energy left at the end, not just the beginning. VO2max isn't about elite performance. It's about how long your body can keep showing up for you. And that's a health metric worth training for. The news is next. On the news front, a lot occurred this weekend in South America. Here's what's happened in Venezuela since Saturday morning and why it matters. Just before dawn, on Saturday, U.S. Special Operations Forces carried out a coordinated raid in Caracas. The operation struck multiple sites tied to Venezuela's presidential security apparatus and culminated in the capture of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. Within hours, U.S. officials confirmed both were flown to the United States and placed in federal custody. Maduro now faces long-standing U.S. charges related to narcotics trafficking and narco-terrorism. Cases that had existed on paper for years, but until now, without enforcement. President Donald Trump announced the capture publicly, initially stating the United States would oversee a temporary transition in Venezuela. That language was later narrowed. U.S. officials emphasized that Washington does not intend to directly govern Venezuela, but rather to apply leverage, political, economic, and diplomatic, during what they describe as a transition period. Inside Venezuela, the immediate question became simple and urgent. Who is in charge? By Saturday afternoon, Venezuela's Supreme Tribunal, and senior military leadership recognized Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as acting head of government. She condemned the U.S. operation as illegal, reaffirmed Maduro as the country's legitimate president, and called for unity and calm. On the ground, the country entered a tense pause. Businesses closed, streets emptied, schools halted. There were no mass celebrations, but no mass protests either. By Sunday, the Venezuelan military publicly reaffirmed loyalty to Rodriguez, signaling continuity of the existing power structure despite Maduro's removal. Several members of Maduro's inner security circle were reported killed or displaced during the raid, weakening but not collapsing the regime. International reaction has been swift and sharply divided. Several Latin American governments and European leaders condemned the raid as a violation of national sovereignty. China and Russia demanded Maduro's release. Meanwhile, U.S. allies remain cautious, watching closely to see whether this becomes a credible political transition or a prolonged geopolitical standoff. As of this morning, here is where things stand. Maduro is in U.S. custody. Rodriguez controls Caracas with military backing. The opposition sees opportunity, but holds no formal power yet. And Venezuela's political future remains unresolved. This was not the end of the crisis. It was the opening move. And the next decisions, by Caracas, Washington, and the region, will determine whether this moment becomes a reset or a rupture. Tech and culture is next. For Tech and Culture, we are continuing with our series on why music is the soundtrack to our lives. We discussed today in part 2 the idea that music is memory with a pulse. A song doesn't just remind you of who you were, it brings your nervous system back online in that moment. You can hear 3 seconds, not even the chorus, and suddenly you're somewhere else. A car at night, a childhood bedroom, a season of your life you haven't consciously visited in years. That's not nostalgia, that's neurobiology. Music is not stored in the brain the way facts are stored. It doesn't live primarily in the hippocampus as narrative memory. It lives at the intersection of emotion, timing, and physiological state. When the brain encodes memory, it prioritizes moments with heightened arousal, joy, fear, longing, or grief. Music amplifies all those signals simultaneously. Sound, emotion, and identity become bound into a single neural pattern. So when you hear that song again, the brain doesn't retrieve the memory the way it would a photograph or a sentence. It reconstructs the state. Heart rate shifts, breathing changes, posture adjusts. Your emotional temperature moves before you have time to think. You don't remember the moment. You re-enter it. This is why music evokes time traveling in a way images and words don't. Photos show you what happened. Music puts you back inside how it felt. And this distinction matters because memory is not just about recall. It's about identity continuity. The sense that you are the same person who lived those moments. Music preserves that continuity. This is also why music can reach people with Alzheimer's and advanced dementia when language cannot. Someone may lose names, faces, chronology, but play a song from their early adulthood, and suddenly something lights up. They sing every word. Their posture straightens. Their eyes focus. The memory was never stored as a story. It was stored as a state of being. And that same mechanism is why modern technology interfaces with music so powerfully. Your Spotify Wrapped feels more personal than any social media recap because it isn't showing you what you clicked on. It's showing you who you were while time was passing. Those playlists aren't collections of songs. They're autobiographies written in rhythm and tempo. We don't choose music randomly. We choose it to anchor transitions, to metabolize loss, to survive change, to remind ourselves who we are when everything else feels unstable. When life accelerates, music slows time. When life fragments, music integrates experience. When words fail, music holds memory for us. Music doesn't sit behind our lives as background noise. It moves with us through time. It pulses. It breathes. Music doesn't archive our lives. It replays them with a heartbeat. The lighter roast is next. This morning, our topic: friends, money, and the loan that changed everything. Let's talk about lending money to friends, because nothing tests a friendship faster than mixing love, trust, and zeal. We've all been there. A friend calls. Their voice drops an octave. You already know what's coming. As no one clears their throat like that unless they're about to ask for money or forgiveness. And right away, your brain starts negotiating. Is this a loan? Is this a gift? Is this a donation with emotional interest? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. When a friend asks for money, they're not just asking for cash. They're asking you to enter a relationship contract with no terms, no maturity date, and no enforcement mechanism. Option 1, you loan it. You say no rush whenever you can, which is adult code for, I will absolutely remember this forever. Every time they post a vacation photo, buy new shoes, or order guacamole, your eye twitches. You're not angry, you're just aware. Option 2, you give it, but you keep score. You never bring it up, but suddenly you feel entitled to opinions. Their life choices become a group project you didn't sign up for. And that money, it's not gone. It's just been converted into resentment with a variable interest rate. Then there's option 3, the only one that actually works. If you can afford to give the money and not miss it, give it and emotionally release it. No reminders, no follow-ups, no mental ledger. You gave help, not leverage. But if you can't do that, if repayment is part of your emotional math, then do not offer. Not because you're cheap, because you value the friendship more than the transaction. Here's the rule. People learn after one bad loan too many. Friends don't default on money. They default on expectations. And friendships are not balanced spreadsheets. Some friends show up with cash. Some show up with time. Some show up when your world is on fire and you don't even know what you need yet. If you're keeping score, you're not being generous, you're running a quiet audit. So the real question isn't, will they pay me back? It's, will I be okay if they don't? If the answer is no, keep your wallet closed and your relationship intact. That's not cold. That's not selfish. That's grown-up generosity. Our commemoration is next. January 5th is one of those days that doesn't shout, but it echoes. It is National Bird Day. A reminder that some of the most important signals in any system are the quiet ones. Birds are environmental early warning systems. They respond to change before we do. When they disappear, it's rarely sudden, it's gradual, and often ignored. There's a lesson there about attention, sensitivity, and the importance of stewardship to nature. January 5th is also tied to resolve under strain. On this night in 1777, George Washington completed the crossing of the Delaware River and prepared for the attack at Trenton, a moment that came after months of loss, exhaustion, and low morale. It wasn't confidence that carried them forward. It was commitment in the absence of guarantees. This day also marks moments when humans reshaped how we relate to meaning and tools. In the early days of January 1984, Apple began the public rollout of the Macintosh, personal computing designed not for engineers, but for people. It was a shift toward technology as an extension of human intuition, not just power. January 5th is also the birthday of two creators who understood time and memory in very different ways. Umberto Eco, born this day in 1932, spent his life exploring how humans create meaning, how symbols, stories, and interpretation shape reality more than facts alone. And Hayao Miyazaki, born January 5, 1941, gave us worlds where memory, nature, and moral ambiguity coexist, where progress always comes with a cost, and where listening matters as much as action. Taken together, January 5th isn't about spectacle, it's about awareness, about acting when outcomes aren't certain, about tools that serve humans, not the other way around, about memory, meaning, and the signals we choose not to ignore. Some days remind us to move forward boldly. January 5th reminds us to pay attention, and that's worth commemorating. Today's show was about capacity, the body's capacity to endure, a nation's capacity to absorb shock, memory's capacity to carry us across time, and relationships' capacity to survive honesty. From VO2max to Venezuela, from the music that replays our lives to the money that quietly tests our friendships, today reminded us that resilience is rarely loud, but it is measurable. January 5th doesn't ask us to rush forward. It asks us to pay attention, strengthen our systems, and show up with intention. This is Handel for the brief wake-up. Stay calm, kind, and curious. I'll catch up with you tomorrow.